other animals in the global kingdom, the great apes are at the heart of a contradiction, a primate paradox, if you will. While some humans are forcing the apes closer to extinction in Africa, others are fighting to save the primate population. Canadian Kerry Bowman is one of the people on the front lines. He makes regular trips to Africa, but while he was home in Toronto, our Eve Savory sat down with him. Here's her feature report.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Are you distressed?
It is one of the paradoxes of human behavior.
That's okay.
The same primate, man, which is busily exterminating its next of kin, is also desperately fighting to save them. The human primate in this picture is Kerry Bowman, a Canadian.
It's time. There we go.
The infant gorilla is called Khan, and he's an orphan.
Khan came to us when he was 3 weeks old. I met Khan when he was 5 weeks old. I've never seen such a small gorilla in my life.
Look at the chest on him.
Khan was literally lifted off his decapitated mother's body. His group of 14 was all slaughtered. Because he was so small, there was obviously very little meat on him.
Okay. Oh.
And he was taken for the purpose of maybe trying to sell him or something like that. I felt a real attachment to him. I felt an attachment as if it was a human child. We've got a gentleman that's come in. He's no longer conscious.
In his day job, Kerry Bowman is a clinical ethicist at Toronto's Mount Sinai Hospital.
He's either going to need an ICU admission or he's going to die.
Every day, he and his team consult with patients and family and advise the medical staff on the life and death decisions of a big city hospital.
Both sides saying that we're really sure that this is or isn't his wishes.
It is the sensibility of an ethicist that Bowman brings to the crisis facing the great apes.
We know that they're very similar to humans in many ways. Because the great apes are capable of sign language, it's given us insight, some insight into their emotional worlds and almost to their inner life. And we see that they experience attachment, loss, those kinds of things in a very similar way to humans. You look into the eyes of the great apes and you realize there's something else going on here, that in fact there's a connection, there's a kinship. I look at them and I don't feel as if I'm looking at an animal as I have been raised to believe an animal is. I feel I'm looking into the eyes of a being, a creature I can relate to as I could relate to you as a human being. And it's extremely close to the human experience. And with that sense of connection, I felt a sense of responsibility that something needs to be done because the situation is extremely serious.
So serious that the United Nations warns all the great apes are on the very edge of extinction. These are the chimpanzees of Gombe, made famous by conservationist Jane Goodall. They're among the last free-ranging chimps in the world. Once there were probably a couple of million. Now, fewer than 150,000 survive.
Not so windy.
Jane Goodall's institute in Canada is allied with Bowman's Canadian Great Ape Alliance against a recent and terrible threat to Africa's wildlife.
To me, being in the forest is like being in heaven on earth.
During the 2002 World Summit in Johannesburg, she warned as European logging companies open up the forest, people with guns follow.
Once the road opens up the forest, then the hunters are coming in from the towns, riding trucks to the end of the logging road, camping there for a week or so, and shooting everything. And this is very, very different from sustainable hunting that has been part of the indigenous life for hundreds of thousands of years. This now is commercial hunting for food. It's known as the bushmeat trade.
In 1980, the UN designated part of the Eastern Congo as a World Heritage Site to protect the rare gorillas that live there. Back then, Kahuzi-Biega Park was one of the world's biological treasures. Now, the park is plundered, its infrastructure dilapidated. its hillsides stripped by loggers and illegal miners digging for the ore coltan needed to make our high-tech toys. The park wardens who survived the 6 years of war in the Democratic Republic of the Congo lost control of all but a tiny corner of the park. And rebel forces and miners had bushmeat for dinner.
What's happening is the miners have poured into this park because people can no longer control it under war conditions. And to sustain themselves, to eat while they're in the park, they're eating the gorillas, the eastern lowland gorillas, and the forest elephants.
Kerry Bowman went back to Kahuzi-Biega this fall. His gorilla tracker shot this video. What he found was the wardens had managed to save some of these remarkable animals, eastern lowland gorillas. But before the war, 258 of them were thought to be here. Now the wardens say they can find only 52. Researchers believe 90% of the total population of this subspecies has disappeared. They're on the critical list. One creature is entirely gone from the park. In 1996, 350 elephants lived here. How have the elephants done?
Terribly. We can't find any elephants within the park whatsoever, and I spoke to the park guards when I was there, and there has been no tracks, no evidence of elephants at all. They seem to all be gone.
Gone to the bones room, every one.
As you get to the park headquarters at Kahuzi-Biega, they have bone rooms in which they're piled with skulls, and they're skulls of forest elephants and eastern lowland gorillas. It's like a kind of a holocaust, really, to see it all. And as you can see from looking at these skulls, there's not a huge difference between a human skull and a gorilla skull. Obviously, this brow ridge is significantly different, but my God, that's not a lot different than human annihilation, because this is a form of genocide. I mean, think of it. It really is just a complete annihilation of sentient beings of a certain sort.
You talk sentient and genocide.
Yeah.
It's very much as if they're human.
Yeah.
Left behind are the young of many species, too lean to barbecue. A lucky few are found and brought to an orphanage, like little Khan.
What would be the outcome for an orphaned gorilla in the forest if he wasn't rescued?
Death. It'd be like leaving a human toddler in a forest. It just wouldn't, they wouldn't make it.
In fact, only a fraction survive, even in the orphanage.
But 85% of gorillas die. They go into a very depressive state after they've seen their group and their mothers be killed, and they will not feed. They just turn that face to the wall, and they have that look in their eyes where I'd rather be dead, and they don't make it. They seem to completely and utterly give up. Gorillas are very emotional, very sensitive, very different. You okay?
While Bowman was in Cameroon, Khan got very sick with a respiratory infection.
You okay? Yeah. Oh.
He pulled through, but the kind of one-on-one care that orphaned apes need is expensive.
Who's this? This is Bobo. Bobo.
So Kerry Bowman and his colleague Robin Waite, that's him taping himself piggybacking a hitchhiker,
There you are, Bobo.
enlisted the creative assistance of the young male gorillas, Bobo, Kibu, and Kemen. Collectively, they're known as the hooligans.
Got your hooligan.
Brush? Whoop.
He's frightened. You can hold it upright. Yes.
And they love to mess with paint.
In a second. And white hair.
A lot of people think this is the wrong way to go, you know, that gorillas should not be painting. I agree, but, you know, the situation they're living in is not ideal to begin with. It's really a rough situation.
Good boy.
I see it as a form of enrichment. I don't believe it does any harm at all.
Okay.
That's another gorilla one. Interesting colors.
Gorilla art is rare. Baby gorilla art, really rare. People will pay thousands for it, knowing the money goes to conservation.
I actually love this stuff, and we're going to be auctioning it off. And this one's really nice because it's got real gorilla handprints in it. You can actually see those big flat gorilla hands right here. We've had a lot of offers. I'm going to have it all properly mounted and framed.
The sales will fund both the orphanage and education. Bowman says as African children learn that these animals are their heritage, they want to protect them.
We bring in literally thousands of African children to see them, to meet them, to learn more about them, their protection, the bushmeat trade. They don't want to live in an impoverished world. They don't want a world where they don't have forests and they don't have animals. It's a big part of their heritage. Let's get that in there.
So as Bowman and a grad student pack for his 12th trip to Africa, he's taking children's books and clothes. He says without assistance, Africa won't make it. And if Africa doesn't, the apes won't.
What do we say to people 200 years from now that look back on this era? Well, you know, there were wars in Africa. The situation was very difficult, so it's best we do nothing. I think it's completely unjustifiable.
The war is winding down, but the threats to the great apes, the logging, the coltan mining, and the bushmeat trade are not. We are close to losing forever the animals who are our nearest kin. For The National, I'm Eve Savory in Toronto.